Hey llamas,
Math.
this is block 9 from topic 10 on page 339. We're going to check out some problemas. Okay.
Cringe.
Y'all love the cringe.
Man.
Yes.
Yeah, we just
Yes.
so much.
I'm cringy half the time,
Alright, so I really like today's stuff. It's very interesting. We're looking at misleading data. A lot of companies, a lot of news people, a lot of everybody, newspapers, magazines, prints, graphs, and such that is misleading. And for it to be misleading, they make purposeful errors on it to make it look better on them. So is the graph necessarily correct? No, they're making errors on it on purpose to make themselves look better. Well, different ways you could do that is leaving off some numbers. Maybe I'm not including all my data and it makes me look better. Like if my grades over there of all the Mastery Advanced and all of that, if I just left off all the people that scored basic, wouldn't it look really good for the class?
Yeah.
It'd be all Mastery and Advanced, and I'd be like, look at all the kids, they all made Mastery and Advanced. Well, I left off all the basic, so it would be misleading. Someone would be like, oh, she didn't have any kids that scored basic. I might have misled you, okay? So they could leave off data. Sometimes they draw it wrong. The graph's wrong on purpose. That way, it looks better on them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit. So we have this girl named Paris. And Paris, her parents only gave her 100 minutes a month for her phone. And she's not too happy about it. And she told her dad that all of her friends and everybody her age has more than 100 minutes, and it's not fair. So he said, well, if you show me the proof behind it and the data, I may consider giving you more minutes. So what she does is she goes ask a few of her friends how many minutes they're allowed. Well, if you're a kid that wants to prove to your parents that everybody else has more minutes than you, are you probably going to go ask the people that you know do not have more minutes than you?
No.
Probably not. You probably wouldn't include those in the data. So would you be giving your dad or parents more the right information? No, that's just how we are. So she surveyed a few people. She knew her parents wouldn't believe her if she included no low numbers. So she included a couple low numbers, but most of them were more than 100 minutes. And she created this box and whisker. And it asked, according to this box and whisker, what is the median minutes most people had here? What is my median?
200.
200. How did you know 200 is your median?
Because it's the line going down the box.
It's your middle line of the box. So that is 200. So we can write the median. This is for number 1. Is 200 minutes per month. So does that graph look pretty good to hand to her parents to convince them?
Yes.
Yes, because most people, it looks like, is having 200 minutes, and she just has 100.
I have negative 2 minutes.
Apples.
No, I have 0.
So, it's just wasn't
No,
a joke.
start. Stop. All right. It then asks or shows, according to this graph, What percent of people surveyed are allowed more minutes per month than Paris? Well, how much minutes was Paris allowed? 100. What percent of this box and whisker is more than 100? What is each section of my box and whisker?
50.
Each section
25.
is 25. How many sections do I have above 100? 3. Here is 100. I've got 1 section, 2 sections, 3 sections. So what percent is greater than 100? 75%. So her graph, that looks pretty good to tell her parents. Hey, 75% of the people have more than 100 minutes. I should get more minutes. That's pretty convincing. But did she do the survey the right way? No, she only asked a few people, and she asked mostly people that she knew had more minutes than her. So for 3, it says a box and whisker plot does not give information about how many data points are included in the graph. Looking at the box and whisker, did I know how many people she surveyed? No. So her dad was like, I don't even know if this is real or not. You could have just surveyed 5 people. Is that going to give him the average for kids her age? No. So, he didn't know how many people she surveyed. So why does that make a difference?
Because she could have asked them.
She could have asked a few people. Is that going to change if I ask 2 people to if I asked 100 people?
Yes.
Yeah, that changes. And I'm going to ask 100 people randomly. I'm not just going to pick who I'm going to ask, right? For it to be true.
But then, like you said, with like the graphs and stuff, that's like if you left like anyone who like made basic and stuff, it's like
Misleading?
yeah.
Yes. So we're going to say that you need to know if the data sample is large enough to be represented, because if it's small, then it's not going to be a good box and whisker. I mean, well, it would be drawn correctly, but it's not actual true data, and it has to be not biased. What did bias mean?
Unfair.
Unfair. So it has to be not biased. Okay. Then number 4 says, what do we call a sample that is chosen in a way that each member of the population is not likely to be selected?
Bias.
By a biased sample. She took a biased sample. She just asked the people she wanted to ask. So her box and whisker ended up being a biased box and whisker. Anyone still writing from here? All right, so Paris had to redo her survey because her dad did not believe her. So this top graph up here is the original one we just looked at, and this one here is her new box and whisker. Do they look the same? No. Okay, so there's several differences in her new data that she collected. So raise your hand and let me know of some differences that you see between the data. Dylan, what you got?
The lowest is 0.
Okay, the new lowest or minimum number is 0 on the new graph. It was, what was that, 50? Okay, so that's different. What else? Camille? The median is different. What was the median in her original? 200. Now it's like
150.
No,
120-ish. Is that good news to prove to her dad that the median of the people now is 120 when she only has 100?
Can we put like 125?
I'm gonna tell you what to write in a minute. Okay, what's some other differences you see? There's a couple more. What do you see?
What is that, 50?
Quartile 1 is at 50. Very good. And it was at 100. So that has changed. What do you see? Quartile 2 or 3? Quartile 2 is your median. 3 is different. It was at 300. Now it's at 220-ish. So that's different. Anything else that we have noticed?
It looks like it's in the middle of.
Not really.
Yeah, it looks like in the middle of.
What you got?
No, there's a little wider.
What's that? It's just wider because I've made the bottom picture bigger. But, oh, it's wider this. What do I call it? What is that word from the beginning to the end? The distance from the beginning to the end. Is my range different? My range of the first one went from 50 to 600. My range of this one goes from 0 to 600. Is my range different?
Yes.
It is. Okay, so we're gonna write all of that down. We have a new minimum, median, and upper and lower quartile. Now the median is closer to her 100-minute restriction. So that's not too great of news to show her dad. Anyone still writing? All right. B says, according to the new plot, where is the upper 25% of the data? Between where? 0 and 50 is my upper 25%.
Between 100
No, like-
and 200.
220
Between
and
100 and 200?
220 and
it's like
600.
220.
Upper 25%. Here's my first 25, my second 25, my third 25, my fourth 25. So the upper 25% is from like 220 to 600.
That's what I was about to mention, but I didn't.
Between about 220 and 600 is my upper 25%. I didn't even write anything on the board today, did I? Nope.
No
Hold on a minute.
homework.
What you got?
How is the upper 25 of 220 and between 600?
Because upper means it's gonna be the higher end of it. Well, the higher end of the number line's over here. And so I'm looking for the 25% that's furthest on to the right, and that's gonna be this lister here. That makes sense? Okay. Alright, for number 6, I'm going to use the animations because it shows it better. On page 5. So, number 6, Paris decides that it might be better to show a bar graph, a histogram, to her dad of the number of people that have different number of cell phone minutes. However, she shows this to her dad, and he says this graph is misleading, meaning there is an error in this graph. So take a look at it and see if you can spot the error. What you got, Tristan?
I think it's, the one where it's right by 600, because it's only one square and they're taking 3 squares for per score.
Okay. Isaac, what do you think?
It's like backwards. Whenever it says numbers per
Cell phone minutes?
it shows 0 to 7, meaning that meaning that out of those 7, that's how much people use.
0 to 70 minutes. Okay. Chance, you had something?
I was thinking about it and I'm not anymore.
Hayden, what do you think?
Is it that from the 70 to 229, is that same?
70 to 229? Oh, those two sections are the same? That's not exactly it. What do you see?
Yeah.
Or need to be switched? Okay, she thinks the titles of these need to be switched, that they're not written correctly.
I think that the minute that 7 on 2 to 70 should switch to 290 and 600.
From 0 to 70, how much did it go up?
7.
70. From 70 to 140, how much did it go up?
55.
From 70 to 140, 70. From 140 to 290.
8. 80.
100 and,
What's that, 80?
yeah, it went up 150.
Yeah.
Did she count by the same intervals every time here? From 290 to 60, did that go up just 70?
It went 310.
Yeah. So did she increase the intervals down here by the same amount? You can't just make up whatever amount you want. It has to be consistent. So she was told, she handed this to her dad and was like, hey, what about this? He was like, hey, no, you did the whole graph wrong. It doesn't even look right. So she had to fix it because all of those ended up being different. She had to, well, I thought it was that. She had to fix all of that. And when she fixed it, the graph ended up looking like that. Before, we had some that were tied, right? Do I have any ties? Well, maybe these two, but that looks dramatically different than the graph she gave her dad. You have to increase the intervals by the same amount. So people do that all the time because a lot of people didn't catch it. Did you catch it? Several of us didn't even catch it.
The bottom.
So if it was like, you know, like 0 and 70, but it's in the middle, would that be like anywhere from 0
Yes.
to 70?
Yes. Okay. So that is misleading. I'm not going to make you draw that, but I do want you to write on number 6 what is wrong about it. So we're going to say, It was drawn incorrect. You're writing this on number 6. It was drawn incorrectly because the bottom interval I forget what I say. The bottom interval was not the same width. It was drawn incorrectly because the bottom interval was not the same width.
Width is a word.
Width. A width? Yeah, length and width.
Really?
Do you know what a length is? Width is how thick something is.
Oh.
Alright, what number is that? Number 6. Okay, let's take a look at number 7. So a magazine had printed this graph, and the movie industry is the one that printed it, and they were like, man, the year 2005 really struggled in the movies in making money in movies. And based on the graph that they showed, it really does look that way, right? Looks like 2005 did have a troublesome year. But once some math people looked at it, they were like, I don't really think 2005 had that bad of a year. Do you see what is misleading in this graph?
They don't show in between the years.
It doesn't have all the years? Well, no, that's not really, I'm just comparing these. Dylan, what do you see?
It shows a very small amount and actually it got 9 billion.
Okay, it goes from 0 to 9 billion in that very, very small amount, and then it started counting by millions. Can I count by 9 billions and then start counting by something different? No, you have to keep counting by the same amount. So, it is a lot of money, but right now, this section is representing 0 to 9 billion. This whole section right here is representing 1 billion. Does that make sense that this whole blue section should be 1 billion and this yellow section is 9 billion?
No.
Shouldn't 9 billion be the larger section?
Yeah.
Yes. So there's 2 ways to fix this. Once they hit 9 billion, did they start counting pretty correctly? Did they skip any numbers?
No.
Okay. They started counting correctly. They only skipped 9 billion. Well, that's a lot to skip, right?
A lot of numbers.
So what they could have done if they wanted to do it like that, you could have told people by putting a break in your graph, making them aware that you skipped a lot. So when a person sees that on a graph, they're supposed to know, oh, they skipped up to 9 billion, now I'm going to look at it. Okay, they could have done that, but let's see what it looks like when they fixed the graph properly. They're adding in the other billions that they left off, fixing the graph properly. Now, does it look like 2005 had as bad of a year as the others?
It's
No.
kind of big, but not like
Just not by that dramatic as the
Yeah.
first one, huh? The first one was like, man, 2005 was terrible, but it wasn't really that terrible compared to the others. Now, huh?
Let's bring it back in time. I want to look over there now.
Yeah, right. Okay. So was that graph misleading now that we see the correct graph?
yes, ma'am.
Yes, it was. It still had a bad year, but they made some errors and made it look different. So we're going to write, because the scale was not consistent on the vertical axis, the difference between the years shown appears greater than the original. That looks like a big jump it had.
Are they still consistent, because
No, they spelled it right. Because the scale was not consistent on the vertical axis, the difference between the years shown appears greater on the original graph.
I didn't see that.
Okay, number 8, we're going to answer some questions about their original graph. And first they had a typo. They said question 8, it's supposed to say question 7. So fix that. Crazy people.
what do you mean? You missed it, something?
I know, they were on 8 and they said look at question 8. Well, we're not on that. We had to look at question 7. So, A says we're looking at the original graph, and they want to know, they want us to look, fellas, see these vertical lines on the graph, all of those vertical lines, or horizontal lines, sections. They want to know 2005 is about how many blocks tall? 2005 is 1 block tall, right? Huh? Is 1 block tall. They want to know how many of 2005 blocks could fit into 2004. Well, if it's 1 block tall, how many could fit into 2004? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 blocks could fit in there. So it made you think, Mallory, it made you think it was a big difference. We went from 1 block tall to 5 blocks tall.
The 2004 is not actually 5 blocks tall, it's actually.
Right, but we're saying about. That's why we said about. Hey. Okay, B says, look at the numbers on the vertical axis and compare 2004 to 2005. Well, what amount about is 2004? 9.4 billion. And what is 2005?
9 billion.
It really was actually below 9 a little bit, so we could say 8.9. So they wanted us to compare. It really was just 9.4 billion to 8.9 billion. Was that dramatically a big difference? It really was only like $500 million, right? Difference. It's still a lot of money, but when we're talking about all the money movie industries make in a year, that's really not a lot of money when they're making $9 billion.
Is that for every movie theater?
This is
One.
all the movie theaters.
Oh, combined.
Like when they say, hey, the Joker movie made blah 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 $1 billion. That's every ticket sold in the world of how much money that movie made.
That's a lot.
Okay? Really? What, Tristan?
Online.
I don't know. Okay. So lastly,
Online network.
number 9 was listed on your half sheet for being test extra credit. And it's really simple. All you have to do is find a misleading graph in the newspaper or magazine. I would probably just search on Google misleading graphs, find one to print, and print it. Then all you have to do is write a couple sentences of why it is misleading and staple that to your test. Well, you can email it to me and I'll print it. It's pretty close. So that is what your test extra credit would be. All right, and I'm going to close out my video here. We're all done. So, thanks for listening, llamas. Like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, leave a comment. Peace out, llamas.